Good afternoon, class. Avery Bell here with the video discussion for Module 9. We were tasked with answering 3 different questions based off of the video and the podcast that we were told to listen and watch. The first question: why did the test subjects in the video continue administering shocks despite the obvious fact that they were causing pain to the other subjects? I came up with 4 different reasons based off of what I learned from the various medias this week. The first reason was that they felt pressure to follow the instructions of an authority figure. I think it's natural for us when we have someone that's in authority over us, even if it's such a short period of time, like the subjects in this video example, we feel pressure to follow their instructions. We think that they're in authority position for a reason. They must know what they're doing, and it must be okay that they're asking us to do a certain act. The second one I came up with, they were concerned with the validity of the results of the study and where they fall on that. So the actor that was playing the head of the experiment kept saying that the validity of the study requires them to continue. I think that sometimes we feel a sense of self-importance, that we're participating in something bigger than ourselves, and that we want to ensure that the results are satisfactory based off our participation. Therefore, they continue with the behavior. The third one, they were concerned with oh no, I already did that. Because they keep asking for assurance from the head researcher conducting the study, they're able to shift some of the blame. I think this is perhaps the biggest reason why the majority of them were able to continue despite knowing they were causing pain, is they're receiving assurance from the head researcher. One, is not going to cause lasting tissue damage, and that they're required to go on. That it helps them shift some of the blame that could come from something from themselves to the researcher themselves, and that was actually the biggest object that the actual researchers were searching for, is whether or not that shifting of blame really helps people commit unethical acts. And I think we saw that it did. The last one, they think highly of the morals of the scientific community. This is just kind of like a personal observation. I think that people hold science in a high regard, as they should. It doesn't mean that it's not ran by humans, and humans make mistakes, and just because it's an entity like that they should, that they aren't prone to making mistakes. Number 2, the second question we were proposed with: what historical examples can you recall that demonstrate this unethical behavior? The video itself points to the rule of Nazi Germany, and how a lot of officers argued afterwards that they were just following orders. I think this study kind of reflects that. A more recent example that came to mind for me was the My Lai massacre during the Vietnam War. 26 American soldiers were charged. However, in the end, only one, Lieutenant William Colley Jr., was actually convicted in the massacre. And the majority of those that were charged either stated that they did not follow orders, or that they were only following orders. And, again, therefore, they were trying to shift the blame on somebody else. And that was definitely a black eye on the country as far as the Vietnam War is concerned. The third and final question: as a leader, what strategies can we employ to ensure that ethical practices are followed despite social pressures or perceived norms? I came up with a few here. I feel like the first and most obvious thing is that leaders should be exemplifying and upholding the ethical standards at all times. If I look at a leader and they're not following the standard, why should I do that? It's easier for me to break the standard if I know, like, hey, my boss or my leader or whoever it is not following those same standards, so why should I? I think that another way is for leaders not to overvalue short-term goals for long-term, in lieu of long-term benefit. I think that that in the long term, if an organization wants to be ethical, they shouldn't be unethical if it's just like, hey, this is just going to benefit us in the short term, even though we're not looking towards the long term. Another way is that leaders should be more informed on today's ethical challenges. I think the ethical challenges faced by leaders today are a lot different than those of 20, 30, 40 years ago. I think the more informed they are, the better they will be at combating those unethical situations. And lastly, I think that that we need to avoid certain time constraint pressures that can cause various unethical acts. I know listening to the podcast, they discuss how oftentimes when we're under a certain deadline or a timed event pressure, that we're more likely to cut corners or cheat or not help those in need simply because we're striving to meet those time constraints. Thanks.